India-New Zealand Trade Deal Decoded. Welcome to Study Studio. If you are a UPSC or SSC aspirant, stop scrolling. India and New Zealand have signed a new Free Trade Agreement, FTA, and it is likely to be asked in exams. The agreement was finalized on December 22, 2025, after just 9 months of talks, which is very fast for such deals. This deal is not just about reducing tariffs. It is also about strategy, investment, and India's global role. In this video, we will explain the key points you must know for exams. We will cover what the agreement is about, why it was signed now, what India gains, what it protects, and why it is important for the Indo-Pacific region. Section 1. The context. Why an FTA now? On December 22, 2025, India and New Zealand officially signed a comprehensive free trade agreement. What makes this deal special is its speed. Negotiations restarted in March 2025, when New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon visited India, and the agreement was completed in just 9 months. This shows strong political will from both countries. Earlier, trade relations between India and New Zealand were friendly but not very strong. Two-way trade was around $3.7 billion United States dollars, which is low when we consider the potential. India is a major manufacturing and services economy, while New Zealand has expertise in high-quality agricultural products. However, high tariffs and the absence of a formal trade agreement limited growth. India's trade policy shift. Both India and New Zealand were earlier part of the RCEP negotiations, which included China and ASEAN countries. India withdrew from RCEP in 2019 because it feared an increase in cheap imports, especially from China, and possible harm to Indian farmers and small industries. After this, India changed its trade strategy. Instead of joining large trade blocs, India started focusing on bilateral FTAs with selected countries. The aim was to protect sensitive sectors like agriculture while expanding trade with trusted partners. The India-New Zealand FTA follows this approach. It comes soon after India signed FTAs with the UK and Oman in 2025, showing India's active trade diplomacy. Why is this deal strategically important? For India, the agreement helps reduce dependence on a few countries, strengthens supply chains, and supports exports under the Make in India initiative. For New Zealand, the deal provides better access to the Indian market and India's rapidly growing middle class, which is expected to reach 700 million people in the next 5 years. It also helps New Zealand diversify its trade partners. Indo-Pacific. This FTA is important for Prelims, Facts, Dates, Trade Policy, RCEP. Mains, India's trade strategy, Indo-Pacific policy, economic diplomacy. It shows how India uses trade agreements as tools of foreign policy, not just for economic benefits. Tip for aspirants. Always link this FTA with India's RCEP withdrawal, Act East policy, supply chain resilience, Indo-Pacific strategy. This will help you write better answers in exams. Section 2. Decoding the deal. A closer look at the key provisions. So, what is actually included in this agreement? At its core, an FTA aims to reduce trade barriers. But this deal goes beyond just cutting tariffs. It also covers services, investment, and movement of professionals, all meant to bring the two economies closer. For exam purposes, we can divide this section into 3 main parts. Trade in goods, investments and other non-tariff areas. Exclusions, what is kept out of the deal. Let's begin with the most important part, trade in goods. Trade in goods, India's big win. For India, this part of the deal is a major success. New Zealand has agreed to provide immediate, 100% duty-free access for all Indian exports. This covers all 8,284 tariff lines. In simple terms, Indian products that earlier faced tariffs of around 10% will now enter New Zealand at zero duty from day one. These include textiles, garments, leather goods, auto components, ceramics, smartphones, furniture, and pharmaceuticals. This is especially important for MSMEs. For small businesses, even a 10% tariff can make exports uncompetitive. This FTA makes it much easier for them to access a high-income market like New Zealand. What did India offer in return? Every trade deal needs balance. India has agreed to reduce or remove tariffs on 95% of New Zealand's exports, but in a careful and phased manner. only 57% of tariff lines will become duty-free immediately. The remaining tariffs will be reduced gradually over 3, 5, 7, or 10 years. This gives Indian industries enough time to adjust and face competition. Benefits for New Zealand exports. The biggest gain for New Zealand is in the forestry sector. More than 95% of forestry exports to India will become duty-free immediately. Products like wool, sheep meat, and coal also get immediate tariff removal. For fish and seafood, which earlier faced tariffs of up to 33%, duties will be reduced gradually over 7 years. Horticulture access, important for prelims. The agreement also improves market access for New Zealand's horticulture products. Kiwi fruit. A tariff rate quota, TRQ, is created. The existing 33% tariff will be removed for 6,250 tons initially, increasing to 15,000 tons over 6 years. Apples. New Zealand becomes the first country to receive preferential access for apples under any Indian FTA. The tariff will be reduced from 50% to 25% for a quota that grows from 32,500 to 45,000 tons. There are also phased tariff cuts for cherries, avocados, and blueberries, and a major tariff reduction on Manuka honey over 5 years. For wine, tariffs will be reduced over 10 years, along with the Most Favored Nation (MFN) clause. This means if India gives better wine access to another country in the future, New Zealand will automatically get the same benefit. Investments and other non-tariff provisions. The second major area is investment and trade facilitation, which is equally important. New Zealand has committed to invest $20 billion in India over the next 15 years. This commitment is backed by clawback provisions, meaning if the investment does not materialize, India can suspend the benefits given under the agreement. The investment will focus on infrastructure, renewable energy, and agri-tech, supporting India's development goals. Movement of professionals, Mode 4. Another major gain for India is the provision on movement of natural persons, Mode 4. Under this, a new visa category allows about 1,667 skilled Indian professionals per year to work in New Zealand for 3 years. This benefits IT professionals, engineers, and healthcare workers. The agreement also improves post-study work opportunities for STEM graduates, strengthening people-to-people ties. Trade facilitation and Ayush boost. The FTA simplifies trade procedures by improving customs clearance. India has committed to releasing normal goods within 48 hours, perishable goods within 24 hours. The agreement promotes e-documentation and self-certification of rules of origin, reducing paperwork for exporters. For the first time in any FTA, New Zealand has agreed to a separate annex on health and traditional medicine, making it easier to trade Ayush services. This opens new opportunities for yoga teachers and Ayurvedic practitioners. India's red line. The most critical part for India is what has been excluded. Nearly 30% of India's tariff lines are completely kept out of the agreement. These mainly include dairy products such as milk, butter, and cheese, along with most animal and vegetable products. Protecting dairy was non-negotiable for India. India's dairy sector supports over 100 million small farmers. Allowing unrestricted imports from a dairy powerhouse like New Zealand could have severely harmed livelihoods. Keeping dairy outside the FTA is a major political and economic success. Limited and controlled concessions. India has made only small and controlled concessions. These include a 3,000-ton quota for albumin at a lower tariff, phased tariff reductions for specific industrial inputs like bulk infant formula and peptones. These are limited to niche areas and do not open the dairy market fully. Key takeaway for exams. The most important point is that India's core agricultural and dairy interests remain fully protected. This balance between trade openness and farmer protection is a strong point for mains answers. Section 3. India's gold mine. Understanding the big wins for India. We have explained the provisions of the deal. Now the main question is, what does this agreement actually mean for India? Why is it being called a gold mine? The benefits can be clearly understood under 3 heads: economic benefits, strategic gains, and protection of national interests. 1. Direct economic benefits. The biggest economic gain is the 100% duty-free access that India gets in the New Zealand market. This makes Indian products cheaper and more competitive for New Zealand buyers. This is especially important for labor-intensive sectors like textiles, garments, and leather, which employ millions of people in India. These sectors face strong global competition, and this agreement opens a new and high-income market for them. It gives a direct boost to the Make in India initiative. Simplified customs procedures are another major benefit, especially for MSMEs. Large companies can manage paperwork. But for small exporters, complicated rules can stop exports before they begin. By reducing paperwork and delays, the FTA helps small and first-time exporters enter global markets. Both countries have stated a goal to double bilateral trade within 5 years, and stronger MSMEs will play a key role in achieving this. 2. Protecting farmers and national interests. One of India's biggest concerns in any trade agreement is the impact on farmers, especially when dealing with an agricultural powerhouse like New Zealand. In this agreement, India has successfully protected its interests. Almost all dairy and major farm products have been kept outside the deal. This shows a clear and strong negotiation strategy. India has opened its economy to trade while still protecting its most vulnerable sections. For GS Paper 3, this FTA is a very good example of a balanced trade policy that supports growth without harming farmers. 3. Investment, more than just money. The $20 billion United States dollars investment commitment from New Zealand is another major gain. This is not just financial investment, but high-quality investment. New Zealand is a global leader in agri-technology, renewable energy, and food processing. Investment from New Zealand brings technology, skills, and best practices along with capital. This can lead to better cold storage facilities, reduced food wastage, and clean energy projects. Such investments directly support India's long-term goal of Viksit Bharat 2047. 4. Services and human capital gains. The agreement also creates new opportunities for Indian professionals and students. New visa pathways allow skilled Indians to work in New Zealand and gain global experience. For a country like India, with a strong demographic advantage, this is extremely valuable. It leads to remittances, knowledge sharing, and long-term professional networks. The special annex on Ayush is another important gain. It reflects growing global acceptance of India's traditional knowledge systems like yoga and Ayurveda. 5. Strategic and global image benefits. This FTA also strengthens India's global image. By signing a high-quality trade agreement with a developed country, India sends a clear message that it is open to trade, but on fair and balanced terms. It challenges the idea that India is overly protectionist. This improves India's credibility and strengthens its position in future trade talks with partners such as the EU and the US. Overall conclusion: the India-New Zealand FTA delivers benefits on many levels. It secures markets for Indian goods, brings investment and technology, creates opportunities for Indian professionals, and protects farmers, all while improving India's strategic standing globally. Section 4. The give and take what New Zealand gains. Although New Zealand's largest export, dairy, has been mostly kept out, the FTA still gives it preferential access to many other products. This deal acts as New Zealand's foot in the door to the Indian market. As discussed earlier, sectors such as forestry, sheep meat, wool, and fisheries will gain significantly. For New Zealand's forestry sector, duty-free access to India's huge construction and manufacturing market is a major long-term advantage. Similarly, for sheep meat exporters, the removal of a 33% tariff makes their products much more competitive in India. In horticulture, even though imports are allowed only under quotas, the situation has still improved. The quotas for kiwi fruit and apples are set higher than current trade levels. This means New Zealand exporters get immediate space to expand exports and build brand recognition in India. The gradual reduction of tariffs on wine and other fruits also gives their industries clarity and stability for future planning. There is also a less visible but important gain for New Zealand in manufacturing. The agreement allows duty-free re-exports. This means New Zealand can send inputs such as specialized milk powders to India, which Indian manufacturers can use to make finished products either for the domestic market or for export. This means New Zealand can send inputs such as specialized milk powders to India, which Indian manufacturers can use to make finished products either for the domestic market or for export. In this way, New Zealand's dairy sector benefits indirectly from India's growth without direct dairy imports. Now, coming to India's concessions. The main concession is that India has agreed to open its market to 95% of New Zealand's products. Although this is done gradually, it means Indian producers in some sectors will face increased competition over the coming years. This is the basic trade-off in any FTA. The idea is that competition will encourage innovation, improve product quality, and reduce prices for consumers, making Indian industries more efficient in the long run. The concessions in horticulture, especially quotas for apples and kiwi fruit, will affect farmers in states like Himachal Pradesh and Jammu. In addition, the agreement includes cooperation measures, where New Zealand will help set up centers of excellence in India to improve productivity of Indian fruit growers. This turns competition into an opportunity for learning and collaboration. The wine sector is another area where Indian producers will face more competition. However, similar steps have been taken in India's recent FTAs, showing a policy of slow and controlled opening of this sector. To conclude, New Zealand's biggest gain is strategic access to a future economic powerhouse. India's concessions, though real, have been carefully managed through long phase-out periods and quotas, while keeping the most sensitive sectors fully protected. Overall, the agreement reflects mature and strategic trade negotiation. Section 5. The road ahead: challenges and concerns. However, no agreement is without challenges. While this FTA is an important step, its success is not automatic. There are several issues that need careful attention. The first challenge is ratification. Although the agreement has been negotiated, it still needs formal approval by both parliaments. In India, this is expected to be smooth. In New Zealand, however, domestic politics could create delays. Coalition governments often include parties with different priorities. A major concern in New Zealand has been the limited access for its dairy sector. Although the main opposition party has shown support, political delays could slow implementation. The agreement also includes a one-year review clause, which could reopen debates in the future. The second challenge is converting potential trade into real trade. Current trade volumes between the two countries are quite low. An FTA removes tariffs, but it does not automatically create businesses. Companies in both countries, especially Indian MSMEs, will need support to understand the New Zealand market, including quality standards and regulatory requirements. In many cases, non-tariff barriers, such as strict food safety rules, can be more difficult than tariffs. Effective implementation on the ground will be crucial. The third area of concern, mainly from New Zealand's side, is dairy. Since dairy is New Zealand's largest export sector and has been largely excluded, the overall economic gains for New Zealand remain limited. While India's position is justified, this issue is likely to remain a sensitive point in future discussions. The fourth challenge comes from the global economic environment. Rising protectionism and global uncertainty could reduce the benefits of the FTA. A global slowdown may weaken demand in both economies. Although the agreement supports the China Plus One strategy, India still faces competition from countries like Vietnam and Mexico in attracting global investment. Finally, there is the challenge of fair distribution of benefits. The impact of increased imports on domestic industries must be closely monitored. Industries and workers who are negatively affected may require support. While phased tariff reductions provide time for adjustment, continuous assessment is essential to ensure that the FTA benefits the Indian economy as a whole. Section 6. Strategic significance: the Indo-Pacific chessboard. Now, looking beyond economics, the strategic importance of this FTA is extremely important for GS Paper 2. This agreement is not just about trade numbers, it is a strategic move in the Indo-Pacific region. In fact, its strategic value may be greater than its immediate economic impact. First, the FTA helps create a southern anchor for India's Indo-Pacific strategy. The Indo-Pacific is mainly a maritime region. By building strong economic ties with New Zealand, a key South Pacific nation, India strengthens its presence in the region. This complements India's strong partnership with Australia and its engagement with Pacific Island nations, creating a network of like-minded democracies in the southern Indo-Pacific. Second, the agreement strengthens supply chain resilience. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the risks of depending on a single country for critical goods. As a result, the China Plus One strategy has become essential. This FTA makes India a more attractive option for New Zealand companies seeking diversification. At the same time, partnering with a technologically advanced country like New Zealand helps India integrate into secure and high-quality global value chains. Third, the FTA gives strong economic support to India's Act East policy. While the policy initially focused on ASEAN, it has now expanded to the wider Pacific region. This agreement shows that India's eastern outreach is backed by serious economic engagement. New Zealand can also act as a gateway to the Oceania region, where China's influence has been increasing. India's approach offers a positive and cooperative alternative. Fourth, the agreement strengthens India's global credibility. By successfully concluding a high-quality FTA with a developed country, India demonstrates that it can engage confidently in global trade. It shows that India is willing to open its markets, but in a careful and well-calibrated manner. This builds trust and improves India's position in trade negotiations with major partners such as the EU and the US. Finally, people-to-people connections play a vital role. Provisions for students and professionals encourage long-term engagement between the two societies. The Indian diaspora in New Zealand, which makes up nearly 5% of its population, acts as a strong bridge between the two countries. This FTA further strengthens these ties, creating trust that goes well beyond trade. Such human connections form the foundation of a true strategic partnership. In summary, this FTA must be viewed through a strategic lens. It uses economic cooperation as a tool to achieve larger geopolitical goals, a stable Indo-Pacific, resilient supply chains, and a stronger role for India as a responsible and constructive global power. So, to conclude, the India-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement signed on the 22nd of December 2025 is a very important agreement, economically beneficial and strategically strong. It clearly shows India's new, confident, and balanced trade policy. For exam preparation, remember these most important points. First, the core deal. India gets 100% duty-free access for all its exports from the first day. India will reduce tariffs in phases on 95% of New Zealand's goods. But key agriculture and dairy sectors are fully protected. Second, the big wins for India. Major benefits for employment-generating sectors like textiles and leather, supporting Make in India and MSMEs. New Zealand has committed $20 billion in investment, and Indian skilled professionals will get new work opportunities. Third, India's red lines. The most important point for answers is that India protected its dairy sector, securing the livelihood of millions of farmers. This proves India's approach to free trade is balanced and cautious, not risky. Fourth, the strategic angle. This FTA supports India's Act East policy and Indo-Pacific strategy. It creates a strong partnership in the southern Indo-Pacific, improves supply chain security, and increases India's global credibility. Fifth, the speed. This is one of India's fastest free trade agreements, completed in just 9 months, showing greater speed, confidence, and intent in India's foreign policy. This topic is very important for exams and can be used in GS Paper 2, International Relations, and GS Paper 3, Indian Economy, Trade, and Agriculture. Possible exam questions include: discuss the key provisions and strategic importance of the India-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement. How does it support India's Act East policy? 15 marks. Critically analyze whether the India-New Zealand FTA is more strategic than commercial in nature. 10 marks. If you follow a clear structure, background, provisions, benefits, concerns, and strategic value, you can easily write a high-scoring answer. If this explanation helped you, like the video and share it with other aspirants. Subscribe for more simple and exam-focused analysis. Now tell me, what do you think is the most important part of this agreement? Is it the immediate benefit of zero-duty exports, or the long-term strategic partnership in the Indo-Pacific? Write your answer in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe to Study Studio.